Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time. Today, we're digging into a really powerful system, how claims of biblical authority are used to enforce a specific and often damaging idea of marriage. Our guide for this explainer is the book Marriage, Bible, Violence by Saima Afzal and Johanna Stiebert. Now, we're using their research to understand how a whole library of ancient texts can be turned into a tool for social control. So let's get into it. You've probably heard this before, right? The idea that the Bible gives us one single, clear, divinely ordained blueprint for what marriage is supposed to be. And this model, we're often told, is under threat. It's this perfect standard that we've got to get back to. And just listen to the certainty in a quote like this. You have influential groups like the Council for Biblical Manhood and Womanhood presenting the Bible's message on marriage as simple, fixed for all time, and totally unambiguous. That's the claim you see on the surface. But how is that certainty actually manufactured from texts that are, well, anything but simple? Okay, so how is this illusion of certainty actually built? Let's start peeling back the layers and see how the text gets shaped to create what sounds like a single authoritative voice. The book points to a key mechanism called proof texting. This is where you pull specific verses out of their context to support an agenda, like, for example, complementarianism, the belief in male headship. Any verses that might contradict that idea, they just get ignored. It's how you build a really clean narrative from a pretty messy library of texts. You know, the process actually starts even before that, right at the level of translation. Take the Hebrew word isha. It can mean woman or it can mean wife. So translators have to make a choice, and that choice can be ideological. As the book points out, when you translate a powerful female judge's description as wife of Lapidoth, you're making her sound way more conventional than if you translated it as woman of torches. That one little choice completely shapes how we perceive her authority. And this leads to another technique, selective application. So here you have an interpreter from that same group, the Council for Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, arguing that, hey, Paul's rule for women to wear head coverings, that was culturally specific to that time. It's not a universal command for today. But then, watch the switch. The very same interpreters will turn around and argue that another concept, male headship, is a universal, abiding requirement that's rooted in creation itself. So who gets to decide which rules are just cultural and which ones are timeless? The interpreters do, and that reveals a system that's being driven by a pre-existing agenda. This brings us to a really crucial question. What is this system of interpretation actually designed to do? Because it's not just about finding meaning, it's about directing power. And this is the core question, isn't it? If the biblical texts themselves are filled with all these diverse, complex, and sometimes even contradictory pictures of marriage and relationships, why does one specific interpretation, like complementarianism, end up feeling so absolutely authoritative? Here's the book's central metaphor for helping us understand this. Don't think of interpretation as just a magnifying glass trying to find the one true meaning. Instead, think of it like a switchboard, an infrastructure that's designed to route power. Okay, here's how it works. The input is always the same, that huge, complex library of biblical texts. But you have an operator at the switchboard. That's the institution or the person with interpretive authority. And they can connect that input to very, very different outputs. They can route the texts to support a social norm of strict hierarchy, or they could route the exact same texts to support a social norm of equality. The final output depends entirely on who is controlling that switchboard. So, finally, let's look at what this whole infrastructure is really built to achieve. What's its ultimate purpose? The book's conclusion is that this system isn't really about a neutral reading of a text. Its main function is what's called boundary maintenance. See, by declaring that one interpretation is the only correct biblical one, the system defines who's in the group and who's out. It's about protecting institutional power and enforcing specific social norms, all by labeling any disagreement as a threat to biblical authority itself. So, the next time you hear someone say, the Bible says, especially when they're talking about marriage and gender, this gives you a brand new lens. You can ask yourself, what system is being activated here and whose boundaries are being maintained? This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.